Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any changes to the agenda, Dr. Finch?
No changes.
Before we move forward, I think we need to excuse Mr. Strong and Mr. Thorner from tonight's meeting.
Right. I'll take that as a motion.
As a motion,
All
yes,
those
thanks.
in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. You have to speak up, Mr. Jager. Communications
All right, we have no communications this evening.
and response to public comments.
Yeah, no response to public
No
comment.
response. All right. And then we'll move to item number 6.
Excuse me, didn't we have a comment last week about?
There was a question that had been answered previously, and then I asked Stacy Drake to contact our patron, and Stacy was able to take care of that. Yeah, thank you.
Good, thanks. Then we'll move to item number 6, the program presentation, highly capable program.
All right, this evening we're going to have a presentation. It was rescheduled from previously. Wendy Clark is our coordinator for the program. She teaches highly capable classes at the middle school campus, mid-level campus. And then she also coordinates for the whole district. And we definitely have to announce that we just, last weekend was the annual conference for the Washington Association for the Education of Talented and Gifted. And they surprised Wendy with the Carrie DeMarco Award of Excellence. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award for her impact across the whole state of Washington regarding education for talented and gifted. So we should all give Wendy a hand before her presentation. All right, so Wendy has a PowerPoint, so we'll ask the board to go ahead and join the audience, and we'll be able to hear her presentation. Later in the program, we will have an action item to approve the highly capable program, and we'll submit that to the state of Washington through the iGrant system, which is the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. So we'll have official approval of the program later in the meeting, but now we'll have a presentation by Wendy Clark.
Thank you, Dr. Finch. Is it on? All right. So as stated, I am coordinator for the program, and then I also teach some highly capable PBL, project-based learning classes at the middle school also. And I was telling Mr. Meyer before the presentation that it's the best of both worlds. I absolutely love what I do. I get to start my day with kids and ground my work with the kids every single morning. And then I go on with the rest of the day supporting teachers and students and families across the district. And I absolutely love it. So the program is based on the new-ish in 2013-14 RCWs, the Revised Code of Washington, that highly capable students is access to accelerated learning and enhanced instruction is access to basic education. So it is under the basic education umbrella as of 2014. With that came the requirements for all districts to have a program, K-12, with a continuum of services. So what we'll talk about tonight is the equitable access and identification processes that we have implemented, the supports for staff, students, and families, and also our continuum of program services. Much of this is some of what I presented a couple years ago, but the things that have been added since then, I'll be sure to highlight. So as for the identification, in our RCW, it says that highly capable students are students who perform or show potential for performing at significantly advanced academic levels when compared with others of their age, experiences, or environments. There's a lot to unpack in that statement, and there were some of those pieces and parts that maybe weren't being done as thoroughly when it came to identification, so we've added some steps in order to really fully comply with all of that statement. Some internal improvements, the multidisciplinary selection committee that we have is 13, I think there's 13 members on that committee, and there's representatives from all elementary schools, school psychologists, director, coordinator, and administrators. I conduct a data sweep of all K-5 students for any kind of objective data. So we look at WAKIDS, iReady, Smarter Balance assessments, anything that we have an objective data point for. I do a data sweep of all K-5 students. And in addition to that, we do a cognitive abilities test screener at second grade across all of second grade. The cognitive abilities test is a different kind of measure. It's a problem-solving reasoning measure, where the iReady, Smarter Balance, those are more of academic measures. So we want to look at it from multiple pathways so that kids can access the program from multiple pathways. We do all of our testing during the school day at the students' school, which kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but there are still districts that are doing it outside of school hours or requiring them to come to a different site that's unfamiliar to them and, you know, probably not the best testing situation. So I like that we are definitely doing this at their school during their day in their second grade classroom when it's their screener, so it's a very familiar environment to them. I do transfer or flag students upon enrollment, whether they go through the hard copy enrollment process or online. They're flagged if they've ever received any kind of highly capable or gifted services elsewhere. And that comes to me within a week, and then I follow up on those students. So that's another way that we've increased the access to program. The newest parts this year is I'm doing a talent development projects through some learning games at the elementary schools. I'm getting that scheduled with second grade teachers right now. And those are some, exactly what it sounds like, some learning games. There's 3 different games that we've purchased sets of for all of the elementary schools. And I'll go to all second grade classrooms once in November, once in December, once in January to teach the kids how to play these games. And then as they're playing the games, the teacher and I will kind of monitor and observe and listen for certain things that might stand out as somebody showing some talent that maybe it isn't coming out in another way. It also gives them some experience at some of these kinds of thinking skills that maybe we don't do very often in school. The online referral system is also new this year. It's much more streamlined. It's offered in English and Spanish, and teachers have access to it on their school data site as well. So it's an easier way to get people to be able to refer students. This is a quote from the National Association for Gifted Children. Screening all children using multiple measures and benchmarking against local norms increases fairness and the diversity of children identified and served in gifted programs while keeping standards high. So we've started to do all of those things, the screening that we're doing, using the multiple measures and looking at local norms. This is the flow chart for identification. I'm not going to go over all of it, but I do want to include it to show and to answer that question of why are the referrals so early in the year when they're not going to be placed in program until the following year? Well, because there's a lot of steps to go through and a lot of different requirements by the state with the multidisciplinary selection committee, the screening process, securing parent permissions before a student is tested, and making sure that we've gone through the appeals process properly, and all of that takes that much time. Other things that we have included with this is that parent permission piece that I'm going to be working with our Minerva, what's her title? Family coordinator, family programs coordinator, whatever it's changed to. Thank you very much. Family engagement coordinator. She and I have also already talked quite a bit about not only how to include more of our multilingual families, but also for some of the families that they've given permission for me to test and they qualified for program, but I have a hard time getting the permission, the written permission for them to be in program. And so that's keeping some of our other underrepresented students out of program. So I'm working with her to make those improvements. This is from a West Valley staff member on the survey a couple years ago. The net has been broadened to find students needing highly capable services who would normally slip through the cracks. I'm very happy about this. And, are there some still slipping through the cracks? Quite possibly. That's where we're constantly reevaluating and improving program. This is showing that we are getting closer to our overall district demographics in many areas, including federal race, Most notably was last spring when 22% of those newly identified students were Hispanic Latino. In 2021-22, 15.8% of high caps were Hispanic Latino. So this is of just the newly identified. Overall, the percentage is 15.8 now. So it's getting closer to our overall district demographics. But when I looked at just the newly identified, it was the largest percentage that we had had as of yet. So that was a nice improvement. I include this slide and I always add this little caveat to it. So it's very hard to read, obviously. So this is white, I'm gonna have to read my screen, Asian, Hispanic, Latino, 2 or more races, and then we've got a couple other small slivers in here. This does not necessarily mean that we are over-identifying any population. We are under-identifying some populations. And when those that are being underrepresented and under-identified start to level out to the total demographics of the district, then those higher percentages will automatically adjust once we identify more equitably. So here's the other improvements that we've made, such as in identifying students that are also served with an IEP or a 504 plan. So students that we quite often refer to as 2E or twice exceptional. They have some disabilities or things that we need to be supporting, but we also have these strengths that we need to be supporting as well. So we're getting closer to the district demographics in both of those areas, and also closer in the low income, which is required by OSPI. In 2017, they added the WAC that states that we have to prioritize our identification of low income students. So for that reason, the highly capable screening team, we have access to knowing if a student is free and reduced lunch or being served through McKinney-Vento, migrant, homeless, any of those kind of areas. We still are underrepresenting our bilingual students and those being served through the mobile homeless migrant programs. So that's again where I'm working with Minerva and Geraldine Ashbaugh as well to make some improvements in those areas. All right, community outreach. We do have some advisory committee input 3 or 4 times a year that we get together. Public notifications in multiple medias and languages. Enrollment process for transfer students that I mentioned earlier. That online referral that's available in English and Spanish, it's 2 questions, very quick. Once that referral goes into the system, it automatically goes, because it's tied to our homeroom data collection, it automatically goes and collects all of that objective data that we have on any student. So there is much less possibility of human error in collecting data or in missing data because we didn't have certain tests in on time or something. So that system is going to really improve that. And we've also added some information nights for families, both in English and in Spanish, which it was offered in before as one meeting with a translator. However, we felt like having a separate night for our Spanish-speaking families would make them possibly more willing and wanting to come and participate and ask questions, because it's solely for them, and it will be about how can we serve them better and answer their questions about this program. Supports for staff and students. Last year we had some members attending, we had 13 members attended WATAG in 2021. We have 2 staff members on the executive board, myself and Robert Fawcett. Cindy Lacey was also on the board. This year at WATAG, myself presented. Davina Khan, Russ Tuman, and Brad Liebrick were also presenters. Jamie Woodham and Brian Van Dyke were chosen to be presenters, and they had to postpone it till next year for their own reasons. And Cindy Lacey came back as a retired teacher to do her presentation on teaching Shakespeare to middle level students. And because I'm the one in charge of clock hours, I get all of the evaluations, and I can quite proudly say that our West Valley teachers represented very well, and their evaluations came in very high. So I'm very pleased for that. Some of the other types of supports for staff, I do monthly newsletters that have different ideas, links to videos, little PD in there. I have a monthly PLC meeting for high cap staff. professional development mostly through our opportunities to go to conferences like WATAG, and then also the Summer Institute that I run and some after-school sessions as well. I have a staff webpage that I've built that has an archive of the newsletters. I've got a lending library. I need to probably change that to about 200 titles now because I got quite a haul at the conference this last weekend. And information about the identification process is on that webpage, as well as many links to other sources. In addition to that, I added a Google Classroom for teachers of ready-made materials, and it's listed out by grade band and topic. So if I am a third grade teacher with a high cap student in my room being served for math, I can go into the 3-5 grade band, look for the icon that means math, and grab on it, and it's ready made, and I can just put it right in my Google Classroom for that student or print it off. So it's ready to go, and that's been real helpful. They also have 24/7 access to the professional development videos through Birdseed TV that we have a subscription to. And those are some of the ones that I highlight in every month's newsletter, but there's a lot more on the site that they can access at any time. Student and family supports. So this year I'm going to continue with the family newsletters that are emailed out to all families with identified high cap students, but I've also added Google Classrooms for students. So each grade, there's a kinder, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth, has a dedicated high cap Google Classroom that has activities and enrichment opportunities in reading and writing, math, science, and social studies. I've got probably about 2/3 of the kids in there now. I haven't made it around to all of the schools yet, but as I go around meeting with students to help develop their plans, I'm putting them into this Google Classroom. And then they have a link to communicate with me really quickly. They know me kind of a little bit. They come in, they always, if I have my hair up, they don't know me. If my curly hair is like put in a ponytail, they I don't know, he always like, remember we talked about your plan and we set some goals last year. Oh, that's right. And then they see me like this and they know me because of my curly hair. So when I meet with them to do their plan, I've put them in this Google Classroom and I've shown them how they can go right up to that people tab and there's that envelope next to my name and they can email me if there's anything specific that they want. Let's say they've gone through all of the different math activities and they want something more. They can email me and I'll put that into the Google Classroom. The first week we had that, I had 2 5th grade boys email me because they wanted to do the Create a Creature project and they wanted the hard copies of the PDFs and they wanted to know if I could print them out for them and mail them to their school. And I said, absolutely. But even easier, the teacher was on board. And so she said, hey, can you add me to that Google Classroom? And then I'll just print it out for them and they can start today because they're chomping at the bit. And I said, excellent. So having that has been really nice. I think a lot of kids will take advantage of that. And then I've talked about the referrals online. That's a part of the same system as the updated advanced learning plans that they're using, that all K-7 students have. The plans are ready to go. Not everybody has gone in and made their goals yet, but they're all able to. There's a video that shows them how to go in and create their goals. There's 24/7 access to staff, students, and families through that plan. And it does include information such as their program model, the areas of service that they've qualified in, their test scores. It automatically populates. So their iReady scores from this last diagnostic are already in there. Their Smarter Balance scores from last spring were already in there before school started. So many of my kids knew how they did on that test before I think the school has been able to tell them. And then the nicest part is it's got those individualized goals. And I help the kids set academic and affective goals like social emotional or leadership or executive functioning and organization, goals like that. And the third part of it is our program. So let's review the continuum of services. Most of these have been around for a while, but there's some that have changed. Those will be in bold print. At the elementary level, we have the differentiation and gen ed classrooms with Benchmark and Beyond, and that looks different at every building. Some of them have walk to read, some of them do math enrichment pullout groups. It's very different at every elementary school, but they all have something in place for those kids that are at or above level already. And then our full-time program for advanced learners, PAL class, went up through 5th grade when we did the reconfiguration. At the middle levels, we have the advanced math options that we've had for quite some time now. and differentiation within the general ed classroom. We have elective course options that start in 6th grade. The highly capable project-based learning class that I teach is at 6th and 7th grade. And advanced inquiry, language arts, science, and social studies is now grades 6 through 8. Previously, it was just grades 7 and 8. But when the reconfiguration went to K5, 6, 8, we brought the advanced inquiry also down to 6th grade. And then the Innovation Center, as you know, is now for grades 7 through 12. And we do have several highly capable students choose that path. And the feedback has been really great. They like the self-pacing and the fact that they can do a lot more than maybe they thought they could in a regular paced class. I had an 8th grader last year, 1 or 2 8th graders last year that had already finished all of their high school math credit and was earning college math credit as an 8th grader. At the high school, we have lots of pathways, which is so fabulous. It makes the red tape on my end, keeping track of all of their paths, kind of tricky, but that's fine. I will do that all day long. I get emails all the time saying, oh, this person's now like going to take a virtual academy class here, and then they're doing ASU online here, and they're at the Innovation Center, and they're just kind of all over. And I love that. I love that our counselors work with our students to really individualize those pathways for them. These are 2 quotes from some high-cap parents from the survey this last spring. I love the program for high-cap kids in the middle school. That's exciting to read about. Also, there are so many different routes in high school for the kids to reach their goals and be challenged, which is just what I was mentioning. There's so many pathways. Testing all kids at 2nd grade is a really important step to identify all kids needing services. The PBL class, advanced inquiry, and advanced math classes are all really engaging, and my student is happy to be with peers and working on challenging projects. This is as of when I was originally supposed to present. These were the numbers at each grade level and which of the 4 types of, in CEDARS, the 4 different types of gifted classes that they have coded, either general education, a full-time class, advanced or accelerated, such as our honors, AP, anything that gives them advanced credit or accelerated credit ahead of when they typically would have taken that class. And then an other pathway, which could be a mentorship. For us, a lot of it is the Innovation Center, some of the other virtual academy and vocational type options. So you can kind of see where at each grade level the students are. And then as a grade band, this is where the percentages of them are. There are no advanced accelerated options at the K5 band. In that band, 65% are served in the gen ed class, 35% in full-time high cap class, which isn't offered at every grade level in that band. So that's why that's not closer to probably 50-50. And 6 through 8, you can see the vast majority. And these students here that are in this the advanced inquiry classes, most of them, all but maybe 1 or 2, are also in advanced math. So if they are in advanced inquiry, I put them here. If they're high cap being served in the gen ed classroom, but they are in advanced math options, they're over here. And then we have some that are at the Innovation Center. And then when you get to 9 through 12, all but 1 student is in advanced accelerated classes or other through the Innovation Center, Vocation Center, things like that. And our high cap students performed quite well on last year's state assessments, which, as you know, is the first time we had a full state assessment for quite a while. Not only did the vast majority of them meet standards, but the majority did so at the highest level, the advanced level 4. And do note that these numbers reflect any student identified for highly capable services, whether or not they're being served in all content areas. So for example, some of the students that did not pass the ELA portion of the state assessment are being served in high cap with math. And some of them are also like either on an IEP 504 or title pullout for reading. So they're getting their strength supported as well as the remediation that they need. So where do we grow from here? What's next for our improvements? I do want to continue to increase that outreach and awareness to families of underrepresented groups. I want to increase outreach and communication with those K-5 students across the district, not just with the Google Classrooms and emailing with them, but to be able to meet with them face to face more times throughout the year. Increased talent development opportunities and definitely professional development opportunities as teachers can and want to attend. I will do as many as possible. And of course, I couldn't not include this feedback from a parent on the survey. The teachers are angels. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. They've been so great, so patient, so giving of their own time and money, all for the kids. They are the best. Please give them all raises or free coffee for life. So one or the other. I guess, maybe that goes hand in hand. So I thought that was a pretty cute feedback, because then this parent actually did tell me who they were. At the end of every survey, I say, if you want to be contacted about your answers on this survey or discuss anything, please let me know. And this parent did let me know who they were, and they let me know the year before who they were as well. And their answers this year were pleasantly more positive, and just couldn't say enough about how well they thought that their child was being served. So, any questions for me? Clark. Yep. No relation to Nick Clark or Heather Clark. The kids ask me all the time. Yep. All right.
Because we're streaming this. Well, first of all, thank you, Wendy, so much for the presentation, and I'm really gratified to see the improvements at the mid-level. And that was an area in the past where our parents had asked for some improvements. And of course, with your leadership and with you providing services to kids at the mid-level, but then also having the advanced inquiry and just the professional development that you've done with staff, I just have seen so much improvement since you've joined us here in West Valley. So really appreciate your work on that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for letting me talk about the program that I love so much, and I'll talk about it all day long if you let me.
So any questions from the board?
Well, I
just
just want to thank Wendy for, this is definitely much different than the first presentation I saw on that. Well, at that time, it was the PAL program, and the highly capable. And it's been the improvements and the opportunities and pathways that are now afforded all of our kids at all of the schools. Instead of this.
The intent of the law for the continuum of services
Right.
K-12. And
Well,
I think we're getting that message out there. It's much more than just one grade band.
right, because we had some pushback in the beginning with turning one of our schools into a satellite school. When kids were moved from their home school to that one. Mm-hmm. And it created several problems in that, kids and parents opted out that were
Which is still
capable.
an option.
Right.
It's really about meeting the best needs, meeting the needs for every student.
Mm-hmm.
And for some students, that's the best pathway. For some students, it's not. And so making improvements, no matter which pathway they're choosing, is the goal.
Okay, that's good. And I tried to figure it out in my head. I'm not that quick, but the number of kids that are going through the high cap program that are ending up with Mr. Waters or at the Innovation Center, yeah.
I can get the exact numbers to you.
Well, that's okay. I was just trying to, off the top of my head, and I couldn't come up with one that satisfied me.
I know there's at least, just in grades 7 and 8, I want to say there's at least 15 students that are there. And then when we added 9-12, some of the students that transferred that, had already were too old for the Innovation Center last year. Mm-hmm. But now that they can go, have transferred there, so I'm not sure what the exact numbers are.
Okay. Well, it sounds like, though, that the continuum is working one way or the other. So that's, the percentage is, to me, it was just one of those things I wanted to figure out and couldn't. All right.
I had a couple of questions for him. Mr. Meyer's been around even longer than me. But, and I know what he's talking about, when we had 2 school board members who really pushed having a program at the elementary. before you. And we started a third, fourth grade program, and it was not popular. And I was at middle school at the time, and I did not want it at the middle school. And I fought it and lost because Mr. Meyer and the other board members told me that you're going to do it. And I love it. I love that program. It was a program that really challenged kids who oftentimes had not been challenged. They were correcting other people's papers, or they were over in a corner reading a book on their own. And you put them together and they could challenge each other. And it was just so fun to watch. And it totally sold me on the idea of the high cap program after I saw it in action. It had to be sold. My question still is, and Peter, you said this, but at middle level, even though the percentages look pretty good, if it wasn't for your classes, there's not a lot of middle level, not as much middle level activity with high cap kids as there is at the elementary, or at the high school. There's a drop off at the middle school. From looking at the percentages, we did. If you weren't teaching something, there's not.
I'm not teaching the advanced inquiry classes.
Yeah, maybe you could share a little more about advanced inquiry, because that's a relatively new
Okay.
opportunity for our
Yeah,
students.
Okay,
So-
because that, at one time we did, and then we dropped it, and we lost it, and then you came and you saved it.
So
So
it's
you're not
not
teaching that?
considered an honors class, right? An honors class or something that's like an AP class, those are open to anybody that, when they go to the high school, and if they can work at that level and sustain that pace and that rigor, then that's for them. Advanced inquiry is taught through more of a project-based lens and an inquiry lens. So it's more putting the questions to the students and letting the students come up with the questions that drive some of the curriculum. And we have 2 sections in 6th grade and 2 sections at 8th grade because the numbers supported it. At 7th grade, we have 1 section in each of the content areas. So there's advanced language arts, advanced inquiry language arts, science, and social studies. So for example, at 6th grade, Cindy DCO teaches 2 sections of advanced inquiry science. And Renee Berger and Michelle Smith teach a section of humanities, the language arts, and the social studies, 2 sections of the advanced inquiry. So it is their core content class done through an advanced inquiry lens.
Okay.
Now, the class that I teach is the advanced project-based learning. It's a semester-long elective that, we call it an elective, but all 6th graders that are high cap come through my class. And then as a 7th grader, they can elect to take it if it doesn't conflict with their other advanced classes and other electives, which this year it did for a lot of them, unfortunately. But a lot of them choose to take it again. And that class is, the biggest reason for that class is to teach self-awareness, self-discovery, and self-advocacy. What it means to be highly capable and what it does not mean to be highly capable. That it does not mean you're better than anyone else, it means you learn differently, and we're in the business of learning, so we're going to recognize that. And that it's also a 24/7 wiring of your brain. So there's things that come along with it that can create some struggles in your life, and when that happens, how do we deal with it? And we have a lot of those kinds of conversations. And then we do a lot of self-advocacy work, and along with a lot of critical thinking. Right now, we're doing stock market game and doing a book study on a school set 100 years in the future, and looking at perspective and how perspectives go into play in education and things like that. So that's an elective class. That's a semester-long class. That's the presentation, one of the presentations that I did at WayTake this last weekend, and it's the one that I've been asked to present at NAGC in Indianapolis next month, is on that class, is how to bring those levels of services, like the social emotional and the self-awareness, that kind of level of service to secondary level students, because oftentimes, once they hit secondary level, their service becomes solely about the advanced academics. And we don't necessarily serve the social emotional self-regulation. What about, the brilliant kid that cannot figure out how to zip up his backpack and it's falling all over? We've got all ends of that spectrum, so we work on all of those skills in that class as well.
Great. How about math at middle level?
The advanced math are the advanced math classes that have been in place for quite some time. So there's advanced math at 6th grade that you do not have to be identified as highly capable for. We have lots of students that are not identified highly capable of taking that class. And then at 7th grade, there's 3 different pathways. They can do AMPed or Algebra 1 or Extended Algebra. And then at 7th grade, they can continue with extended algebra or take AMP, or take geometry if they successfully completed algebra the previous year.
Okay, that was my question. My last question, thank you for.
Absolutely.
There has been a reluctance from elementary principals, there's nobody here, but because they hate to lose those kids and send them to Whitehall. Is that still a prevalent situation, that they hate to lose those
You would
third,
have
fourth,
to
and fifth
ask
grade
them.
teachers?
It's a family by family decision. And
They're
for the
leaders.
ones
They're
that
leaders
do
of
or
their-
don't, you have to ask.
Those kids and those parents are both leaders in their schools. I mean, the parents tend to be
Possibly.
leaders and the kids are leaders, and to lose them was always it bothered principals. I thought that they would have to lose that group of kids, and you've done a really good job of lessening that blow, and I think Ferguson has done a great job too at White Hollow of lessening, but is that still a stigma or a battle you have to fight?
We fill the classes each year. We do have a way of prioritizing placement in case there are more that want to be placed in that class than we have spots in that class, which has happened at fourth and fifth grade. So there is somewhat of a trend that maybe they don't transfer in third, but then they do transfer over for fourth or fifth. So those classes are quite full.
So your classes at White Hollow and Powell are the same size as the regular classes
Or bigger.
or really?
They might be bigger.
Yeah.
I believe the fifth grade class might be larger, yeah.
No, we're so happy. That was one of Peter and Dr. Hope's best jobs, I think, was getting from that chief.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to have you here.
They have a job posted for a high cap coordinator.
Okay.
I don't know that it's been filled. It was on the site for months and somebody saw it and sent it to me and said, don't you even think about it.
Yeah, for the audience, we
Let
had
me hear. I will do it as long as you let me.
Wendy provide some professional development for our staff when she was over at Nat Cheese, and then everyone was raving about Wendy Clark, and we said, all right, we have to get Wendy Clark to West Valley. so glad
they
they
called
came.
me to ask to do some summer institute. Where he said, yeah, I want to talk with you about maybe hiring you to do some jobs or to do a job. And I said, like full-time? And he was like, oh, no, for summer institute. Why? Are you looking for a full-time job? Well,
It all worked out.
Yeah.
Mark?
I have a couple things, Wendy. I have a decent grasp of secondary standards. I don't quite understand elementary standards. The kids are identified high cap and they're in the PAL program in the elementary levels. How are they meeting grade level standards, or is there separate standards for high cap kids at grade level, or how do they do
It's not
that?
separate, but there is additional. So besides all of the Common Core standards that they're responsible, just like any other third, fourth, or fifth grade teacher, for covering and or making sure the students have already demonstrated mastery. And this is something I tell all teachers. Like, you're not required to teach that standard to every single student. You're only required to show that every student has mastered that standard. So if they've already mastered it before you've taught it, then they can go on and teach something else or go deeper with material. So they do still have all of the same Common Core standards, but there's also National Association for Gifted Children gifted standards. And that's what I work on quite a bit with my PBL class, and they're incorporating some of that into their courses as well. And some of that is some of the SEL things that we were talking about, relationships, identification, programming standards going there, but then also kids working with kids, interpersonal and interpersonal skills, and self-discovery and setting goals, and some of those are built into the national standards.
Okay.
Maybe you could share a little more about the professional development that you've provided about in some ways like depth of knowledge and creativity, and just going deeper in rather than trying to go further in the curriculum, going deeper into the students' critical thinking.
I'm trying to get more and more teachers familiar with the framework of depth and complexity, and that's making things more complex and changing the thinking, not just making things more difficult. And the analogy that I like there is shooting baskets. So the first time you're learning how to shoot free throws, it might be difficult, but after a while and some skill and some practice, that's no longer a difficult task. Just doing more and more of them isn't going to improve your skill any, so adding the complexity of now it's not a free throw, now it's live during a game and you have defenders on you and you've got the crowd screaming, and so now it's more complex. Even though it's the same motions to do the task, you're adding complexity to it. So the more we can change the thinking involved with the same objective, so I might have 3 groups of kids doing a tiered lesson and they're all working towards the same objective, and the amount of work that they're doing is the same, but the kinds of thinking that they're doing is different. So the level of thinking is higher, but it shouldn't take them more time to do it because we're not asking more. Like, oh, you're done, here's more. That's not differentiation. It's, you already know it, here's something different.
So am I correct in assuming, Wendy, that what you just explained in my simple country boy mind out here is enhanced rigor or advanced rigor that's added to it to challenge the students so that they can advance at a faster pace and understand why?
Yeah, and because every student deserves to grow at least a year in a year.
Mhm.
And if they're already topped out at their grade level, sometimes showing that growth can be hard. It's good that we have some out of grade level testing opportunities so that we can still show that growth for them. But that's what that's for. And it's to the letter of the law for that RCW that I started the slides with, is that their basic education is opportunities for enhanced instruction. So enhanced opportunities in advanced instruction.
Any more, Mark?
And then I had one more about smarter balance testing. Students that are identified as high cap that remain at their home school compared to the kids that are high cap in PAL program. Are you tracking those kids on their growth on the smarter balanced? And is there a pretty good, I would assume that a child going to PAL has more opportunities, higher rigor, and that they would score higher on the SBAC being in the PAL program compared to the kids that remain at their home school? Or are we seeing that they are still achieving at the same levels?
I can check and get back to you for sure. I know that when I pulled the numbers, it was any 3rd grader, any 4th grader, any 5th grader being served. And also, that's just giving me whether they're level 3 or level 4, not the actual 4-digit number that shows how high. So, because I also like to look at that. That can be translated into a percentile as well. So if they're at a 3, how high of a 3? If they're at a 4, how high of a 4? Or how close was that to maybe being a 3? Those are some things I would want to look at as well. But as far as the difference between the two on the state test, I don't have that I feel comfortable enough giving off the top of my head, but I can absolutely get it to you.
I think that would be good data to look at to see if those kids are actually achieving higher and getting the benefits out of the PAL program.
I think the other thing that we've worked on is that we want to have either placement meet the needs of the students, so that it's not necessarily the PAL classroom is better or staying at the homeschool is better. It's meeting the needs of the student, and we want to have high quality with either placement, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I know Mr. Yeager had asked for a comparison document that I linked in the slide deck that I sent you last month when I was supposed to be here, of the comparison between high cap students to West Valley overall to state scores overall. And that was a drastic difference. Like, that was a very strong difference as far as the percentages of them on the state test scoring at the higher levels. But as far as the 2 different pathways at elementary, I don't have those numbers, but I can get them.
This is a tough question. I hate to bring it up. We're really concentrating on universal design of learning. We're really working on all our kids in the classroom and teachers being trained so they can work with the resource room kids and the gifted kids all in the same group. And having the teachers know how to address the needs of all of them. If we truly teach UDL to all of our teachers Why is there a need for a third, fourth, and fifth grade Pell program?
You want my philosophy on that?
I said it was a hard question.
It's not hard for me.
Okay.
Number one, I've been that teacher for 27 years in a gen ed class. The last time I taught third grade, I had students learning their letter sounds, and I had 7 identified ICAP. One of those 7 was we don't even know how high college level reader across the board and everything she did. She really very easily could have grade skipped 2 or 3 grades, but parents didn't want her to do that. So even what I was doing with my 7 or 8 high cap kids was different than what I had to do with her. And then the ones that were learning their letter sounds, and then all of the ones in between.
Mhm.
And having a graduate degree in gifted education, I knew what I needed to be doing for those 7 or 8. And I also knew my standards very well. I taught 3rd and 4th grade, so I knew 2nd, 5th pretty strongly. But you're now asking a teacher to not just know their grade level standards, but in every single content area, not just one. If I'm the secondary teacher, I'm probably teaching one content area. But to know all of the standards, all the way down and all the way up for that, with that breadth of abilities that you have in the classroom in every content area, every day. That's asking a lot. I'm not saying it's not possible a lot of the times, but I don't see that it would be possible on a daily basis in every subject without a lot of work. And that's just a lot to ask of a teacher. There's only so much time and energy to go around, and these kids deserve it, and these kids deserve it, and these kids deserve it, and these kids deserve it. So narrowing the breadth of abilities in the classroom, either through cluster grouping or through some other means, would be helpful. But then when you have kids that, like we were saying, it's not better one pathway or the other, but for some students it is. You even mentioned when you saw and visited that classroom, and you saw these kids that had been separated and came together, there's this kind of magic that happens because they get the opportunity, maybe for the first time, to be their full authentic self. And that full authentic self has maybe been filtered or hidden for a few years. And there's research by America Gross that there's kids as early as 2 weeks into kindergarten that learn to start filtering themselves. The highly gifted kids that can tell that others are reacting to the language that they're using or the things that they're interested in, or the way they want them to follow the rules of that game to a T, because that's the rule of the game. And they don't click. And then sometimes when they get together in the PAL class, they find friends for the first time. And we have lots of survey, in fact, you've seen them being on the advisory committee, a lot of the survey feedback from the parents and the students in that respect, their happiness and attitude towards school, finding peers, feeling like they can be their true selves, and sometimes that's where they find it.
I wouldn't ask that of anybody else.
Oh, I said I will talk about it. If you let me, and I will.
All right. Well, let's give Wendy another hand. Thank you so much for a comprehensive presentation. All right, number 7.
All right, with that, we'll move on to item number 7, which is public comment of non-discussion agenda items. And that's where if anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to discuss that we're not going to talk about later, then please come forward, give us your name and let us know what your thoughts are.
All right.
Well, Dr. Finch, they're not all jumping up at once, so I guess we'll move on to approval of the consent agenda.
All right. That includes approval of minutes, approval of vouchers and payroll, the approval of the financial reports, approval of employment contracts, approval of resignation, retirement, and separations, and approval of leave requests. So that's the consent agenda.
Are there any items that a board member wants to remove from the consent agenda? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
All right, it's been moved that we approve the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.
Next are the action items. So the first is approval of travel requests. So we have the JROTC drill meets throughout the year, and then opportunity for myself to go to the Improvement Science Summit. This is sponsored by the Carnegie Foundation.
I move to approve the travel request.
All right, it's been moved to approve the travel request of Colonel James and Master Sergeant Bynum. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.
Next is approval of policy addition or revision. It's our second reading, and this is to follow the state law to have Juneteenth be an official holiday for the West Valley School District.
All right. Do I hear a motion on 5410 holidays?
So moved.
All right, it's moved to approve the addition of Juneteenth to our holidays for the year. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.
Next is the approval of this resolution 2210-750, which is certification of the upcoming calendar year 2023 excess property taxes.
Joe, do you need Joe here?
Yes.
You can talk about this at all, Joe? or- Okay. I move to certify or
Mhm.
Yeah.
2210-750.
All right, it's been moved to approve Resolution 2210-750, certification of 2023 excess property taxes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay.
And the final action item is approval of Form Package 217, the Highly Capable Annual Plan. This is approval needed by the school board, and then we will submit that to OSPI as part of our approval process for the upcoming, for this school year, the 22-23 school year.
I move to approve FP 217.
All right, it's been moved to approve FP 217, a highly capable annual plan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. After that presentation, how could we not? Then we'll move on to item 10, items arising. Anybody? No. And report.
And just in the board packet, we have the enrollment report, the safety report, travel log report, and the high school ASB report. We have staff available if there's any questions.
From really quick, it looks like our enrollment's up about 100 kids, 120 kids.
That's correct. Yeah, from what we were projected.
And what is the history?
Well,
of the school year?
yeah, the good news is that, remember when we were looking at COVID, the kindergarten students, we had missed on that projection. And last year, when they were first graders, we thought that they would be returning. And so we actually missed on that projection as well. This year, for the second grade, we went ahead and revised and we did a roll up. Well, it turns out second grade, we actually do have more students coming back. So those kindergarten students that we had not found and had not come to school, they're finally coming to school as second graders. So that's good news. Throughout the school year, in general, at the high school, we in the past have tended to lose some students, but we do have the graduation success specialist position. this year. That was hired about March last year. So Lorenzo Juarez is serving in that position. My understanding is meeting with students every day and also meets with our team for family engagement. So really identifying students that may be thinking about dropping out and looking at other programs that we have. So we have a wide variety of offerings for students for alternatives, and then also throughout the state, actually. So we've been making connections with Job Corps, just lots of opportunities for kids. We have the Open Doors program, that our partnership with OIC. So students are working on construction skills and building tiny houses on that site. So there's a lot of options we have for students now. And so we're really doing as much as we can to be proactive and make sure that we have no dropouts, that there's a place for every kid. And if they're not being successful at our high school program, then there's a place for them with one of these other alternatives. So we're going to monitor that throughout the year. And they have every kid's name, and they're calling families and calling kids in and really following up on that. So we hope to see a difference than maybe we've seen in the last recent years.
So the enrollment count probably will stay steady. Hopefully.
Well, hopefully. We actually in the past have sometimes seen an increase at mid-level campus throughout the year, but a decrease at the high school. So we'll see what happens. We're really focusing strongly at the high school to not have any dropouts. That's really a big focus.
I think it was junior year was the year that you saw a
Right.
major drop in kids.
Right. In terms of our enrollment, we've seen a drop at junior. That's not only Running Start, but we have a lot of students that go to a skill center as well. So that's an educational program. The FTE follows the kid. So that's at the YB Tech over by the fairgrounds, but there's 18 specialized programs, and there's, that's an option for our students. So that's maybe why we see a drop in the enrollment, but it's not actually a drop we're not seeing kids drop out. It's just a change of their placement.
When I looked at the district safety report, it looked to me like it was a little bit longer than it has been in years. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, as we return from COVID, we're still seeing a lot of issues with the need to have students understand expectations at school, and we're having administration follow up with that. In addition, there was an email that we sent out to all staff and families that we're really drawing the line that any racial slur is going to be dealt with by the administration. In the past, maybe a teacher had said, hey, knock it off or something like that. But we want to call that to the attention of the administration, make sure that that's recorded on the student's permanent record, and that we have a strong statement that that's not going to be tolerated in West Valley. And so we actually have in the last couple of weeks seen an increase in follow through, but I appreciate the staff and the administration doing that follow through.
Since that email, what has been the reaction of the students?
Well, it's been positive feedback across the board, positive from staff, from the administration, from families, and then also the students have said, well, some of the students were saying, well, that's kind of the way people joke around, and we're trying to get the message that that's not a joke anymore. It's not acceptable, and we're going to follow through.
And I get it, though, the terminology, racial slurs and all that, but that's translates in my mind to bullying in general,
right,
regardless of what it is.
Right.
And as long as our administration, our principals, the leaders are getting that across to the kids, then I think we'll make some headway, because it's, as most of the people here in the room, and I know up here, have seen over quite a few years, it's been a problem in the district. And we've tried before to address it, but I don't think to this extent. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to make positive progress in doing away with it.
And bullying in general is hard, as a principal, hard to define sometimes, if that's bullying or just whatever. The situation that arose here was black and white. It was very, very obvious what the problem was. And Peter jumped on it and said, we're not hearing that word again.
Yep.
That's not bullying in general. That's saying, I'm not going to hear that again. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very good. Excuse me. And that's it to 12, superintendent's report.
Yeah, just for the audience, I shared in the board packet, the superintendent's report was a report on the ongoing professional development that we have for our administration, both for their instructional leadership and their operational management. So we have professional development throughout the year, and just gave an update to the board on both those areas of school administration, the instructional leadership and the operational management. We have multiple trainings throughout the year for both of those.
Good. All right. Item 13, board reports, board development.
I'm sorry, but I didn't go. It was raining last Friday night, and so I didn't go to the football game. and I wanted to go because it was Danny Iman's last game. And the week before at Eisenhower, they gave a little, at halftime, a presentation for Iman, which was very touching because he was, I didn't know that, the winningest Eisenhower football coach, which is not saying much. But
No, wait a minute, James.
But I'm not sure if anything happened with Danny in our last meeting or not, but I think we need to recognize that Iman did an amazing job in his time here and his time. I hired him at Highland at the time for his first job.
That's great.
And I was told when I got the job at the middle school, get rid of the wrestling program because we couldn't let kids take field trips at the elementary because we had no money. But yet my wrestling team of 5 could go to Clay Allen. And it made no sense to the elementary people, Kathy, it doesn't make sense. And that was one of the things they told me to get rid of. And Iman came in and we had a wrestling team of 35. And this is out of 45 kids. And he just has a knack with kids.
Yep.
And now he's heading out of us, but he's done such a good job, and I hope we will recognize him like Eisenhower did. It was very touching, a great guy, and we're very fortunate to have him in our district.
Very good. Thank you. Any more, Mark? No? Well, with that, we've reached that wonderful time of the hour where, and I'll call for adjournment.
All right, 8:03. Thank you, everyone.
We've got lots of stuff to sign, guys.